Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome USC Provost Andrew Guzman.
Well, good evening, everybody. The Casden Institute sure knows how to fill a room. It's great to see you're all here tonight, and we're so delighted to be here hosting this event at USC. As was mentioned, my name is Andrew Guzman. I'm the Provost and Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs at the University of Southern California, and on behalf of the President and the University, I want to welcome you all, and of course, welcome our distinguished guests. It is my great pleasure and honor to welcome you to the inaugural Raymond and Dina Levy Distinguished Speaker Series. This is a wonderful new initiative that aims to deepen understanding of Mizrahi Jewish current affairs, history, and culture, and to highlight the remarkable stories and contributions of Mizrahi Jews in America. And tonight, kicking it off in style, we're privileged and delighted to welcome His Royal Highness, Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi. It's not the first time we've welcomed the Crown Prince. This is his alma mater. He received his political science degree in 1985. I don't think he filled this room at that time. We're also delighted to welcome his daughter, Princess Noor, with us, who is with us tonight. During times in which the world is unstable and there's a lot of conflict, it's so important to remind ourselves of the values of democracy and pluralism, human rights, international cooperation. These are ideals that I know are close to Crown Prince Pahlavi's heart and are important to all of us here and important to this institution. And it's such a delight to be able to focus on those this evening. I also want to welcome Tabby Raphael, an award-winning journalist, whose insightful voice and dedication to illuminating complex narratives has contributed to our public discourse. Ms. Raphael will be interviewing Crown Prince Pahlavi this evening, helping us to explore further the intersection of history, identity, and the promise of a more inclusive tomorrow. So thank you to all of our guests, to the Levy family for establishing this incredible series, and to all of you who came to USC tonight for this event. It's now my pleasure to welcome and invite Steve Ross, Director of the USC Casden Institute, Distinguished Professor and Dean's Professor of History, to the podium to formally begin the event.
Wow, look around the room. We are packed. In less than 36 hours, we had over 500 RSVPs with no advertising. It goes to the importance of tonight's speaker and tonight's program, which is the first of hopefully many. My name, as they said, is Steve Ross. I'm the director of the Casden Institute and professor of history here at USC, and it is my immense honor to welcome Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi to our university. And I want to also, he is here for the inaugural lecture of our newly established Raymond and Dina Levy Distinguished Speaker Series. This evening marks a milestone in the Casden Institute's mission to foster informed dialogue, mutual understanding, and enduring bridges between communities both near and far. And from the time, I think it's about 10 years now, I've taken over as director, our mission has been consistently to bring light, not heat, on some of the most controversial but important issues of our day. And tonight we are pleased to have several community leaders who are joining us tonight. Arik and Marita Casden, Cameron Kasarini, please forgive me, Kansarinia, Simak Sedetian from the National Union for Democracy in Iran, and Jim Varos representing the city of Fresno. We are deeply grateful to the Crown Prince for accepting our invitation and for honoring us with his presence and perspective at a critical moment in history. And we are also honored to welcome his daughter, Princess Noor Pahlavi, who is with us, seated next to her father tonight. For those of you who aren't familiar with his background, Reza Pahlavi was born in Tehran on October 31st, 1960, as the heir to the late Mohammad Reza Shah of Iran and Empress Farah Pahlavi of Iran. He was officially named Crown Prince in 1967 at the time of his father's coronation. And in 1978, at the age of 17, he left Iran for jet fighter training in the United States Air Force at Reese Air Force Base in Lubbock, Texas. And during the same period, the building of unrest in Iran led to the royal family's departure in January 1979. And during the instability that followed, the government of Iran was taken over by Islamicists. The Islamicists established a theocratic regime, preventing Reza Pahlavi's return to the homeland. Despite being forced to live in exile, Reza Pahlavi's commitment and patriotic duty to Iran endures. For over 4 decades, a man who could have very easily done very little has been a leader and an advocate of the principles of freedom, democracy, and human rights for all his country people. He maintains constant contact with compatriots and opposition groups, both inside and outside the country. And Pahlavi travels the world meeting with heads of state, legislators, policymakers, interest groups, and student groups, speaking about the plight of Iranians under the Islamic regime in Iran. He consistently speaks out against the widespread abuse and oppression of the Iranian people and calls for the establishment of a secular democracy in Iran. He calls for regime change through nonviolent civil disobedience and a free and open referendum on a new government in Iran. Crown Prince Pahlavi stands not only as a symbol of Iran's rich heritage, but also as a steadfast advocate for the Iranian people's aspirations for peace, freedom, and democracy, and his unwavering hope, shared by so many in the Iranian diaspora and within Iran itself, is for a day when every citizen may live in dignity, free from oppression, with a chance to determine his or her own destiny. And tonight, as we gather here at USC, we are reminded of the enduring connections between the people of Iran and the Jewish people. Bound by ancient narratives and biblical histories, these two peoples have long shared stories, cultures, and moments of profound kinship. In our own era, the dream persists that the bonds forged over millennia may one day be renewed in peace as neighbors and as partners, united in a vision of coexistence and mutual respect. May this evening's conversation inspire us to all imagine and work toward a future where dialogue overtakes discord and reconciliation triumphs over division. It is also our great pleasure this evening to welcome Tabi Raphael, an award-winning journalist and writer whose insight and voice have contributed so much to public discourse about Iran. We are delighted that she will help guide tonight's conversation, bringing her unique perspective and experiences as the voice of the Iranian Jewish diasporic community in exploring Crown Prince Pahlavi's vision for free and democratic Iran and the possibilities for its people. Once again, I welcome tonight's distinguished guests. I welcome students here. I welcome faculty, friends, and the community at large. And may tonight's event not only illuminate the complexities of the present, but also kindle hope for the future. a future of peace, freedom, and human dignity. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge the tremendous work done by Lisa Ansel, the Casden's Director of Academic Program, to make this evening possible. The difference between a director and associate director is I get to stand here and she does all the work. There's something profoundly unfair. Tonight's event will have three parts so that you know what's coming. An initial talk by Crown Prince Pahlavi, a discussion between him and Tabi Raphael, and then a Q&A with you, the audience. And I invite you all, you would have seen, if you didn't sit down too fast, a piece of paper on everyone's chair, and there's some pens. I invite you to submit questions on those flashcards, which will be collected by us after the Crown Prince's talk and before the interview segment begins tonight. And we apologize in advance for not being able to answer all of your questions because of time delays. I would ask one thing. Please try to make your questions short. No essays this evening. Also, as a reminder, please refrain from recording tonight's program on your phones. The event is being recorded, and if you just type in Casden Institute, it'll take you to our page, and you'll be able within a few days to see all this online on our website. As we embark on this meaningful conversation, I wish to emphasize that USC is committed to maintaining a respectful and dignified environment for all distinguished speakers and all attendees. And any interruption in our program will result in immediate removal from the auditorium, ensuring that spirit of thoughtful engagement and dialogue at the forefront. And I will just add a personal note that had the Crown Prince taken history courses, he would have been further along in bringing world change. And now it is my pleasure, my great pleasure, to invite the two people who made this evening possible, and hopefully many more evenings like this, Raymond and Dina Levy, founders of our speaker series. Dina, Raymond, the podium is yours.
Thank you, Steve. We're grateful to you, and as you said, to Lisa Ansel, USC Casden's Director of Academic Programming, for your vision and for making this inaugural event a historic one. Thank you, Provost Guzman, for co-sponsoring this evening's program and for welcoming us all to USC. As the Provost said, the goal of this Distinguished Speakers Series is to deepen understanding of the current affairs, history, and cultures of Mizrahi Jewish communities, meaning those of the Middle East, North Africa, and Central Asia, and to highlight their stories in America. This evening, we are privileged to have Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi with us to discuss the past and future of Iran and of its Jewish community, which is among the world's oldest and most enduring Jewish communities, having lived in the Persian sphere for more than 2,700 years. Over millennia, Iranian Jews have helped shape their country's cultural, intellectual, and economic landscapes, while Persian traditions have become deeply integrated into Jewish practice. For more than 100 generations, despite periods of hardship, including forced conversions, restrictive laws, and violence, Iranian Jewish communities preserved their traditions. The middle of the 20th century brought a time of unprecedented integration, with Iranian Jews in Tehran and beyond gaining greater freedoms and cultural prominence while still maintaining their identity. Although some challenges persisted, that is the Iran that many people in our audience today and many people around the world remember and miss. Tragically, the Islamic Revolution upended that world, and most of Iran's nearly 100,000 Jews, our families among them, were forced to flee for their lives, leaving everything behind.
In late August 1978, when I was 14, I was studying math with my teacher, Mr. Javadi. When my father entered the room and told me to pack a small bag because I would be traveling alone to America the next day, I looked at Mr. Javadi with a big smile and gleefully said, "Khudafez agha." Goodbye, sir. At that time, although I was aware that our Jewish school was threatened and there was turmoil throughout Tehran, I never thought it would be my final farewell to Iran. The rest of my family left Iran shortly afterwards. We met again here in Los Angeles, leaving behind friends, our home, and the hard work of generations. Our family is one of the lucky ones. Many Iranians of all faiths suffered in deeper and much more painful ways and were not able to recover. I know I speak for all Iranian Jews who were given refuge in America when I express my deep appreciation to this country for the safety, freedom, and the opportunity we enjoy as American citizens. As we did in Iran, despite our small number, Iranian Jews have contributed significantly to our communities here. Tonight's event is yet another expression of our gratitude to America and to USC. Now it is our profound honor and good fortune to welcome Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi, who will look back at our shared history and also cast a hopeful gaze forward, envisioning an Iran and a region grounded in democracy and human dignity, a future that embraces its diverse heritage, including its Jewish community. Please join us in welcoming Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi to the podium.
Thank you so much. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Let's not put the carriage before the horse. Let's first liberate our country, then we'll talk about that. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, dear compatriots, it is indeed a pleasure to return to my alma mater, the University of Southern California, to deliver tonight's lecture. I wish, of course, to thank first and foremost the Dean of USC, Dr. Andrew Guzman, the Director of the Casden Center, Stephen Ross, and the Levy family for hosting this important series and for their commitment to fostering dialogue about freedom, democracy, and the future of Iran. USC was a place that helped shape my outlook on the world and deepened my belief in freedom and democracy. To stand here again in Los Angeles, the beating heart of the Iranian diaspora, it is to be reminded that our struggle is not distant, but alive in the very community gathered here tonight. I return not simply as an alumnus, but to speak with you as partners in the mission of Iran's liberation and renewal. Over the years, I have spoken of a strategy to guide us from dictatorship to democracy. It rests on 5 interconnected pillars. 1, maximum pressure on the Islamic Republic. 2, maximum support for the Iranian people. 3, maximum defections from within the regime. 4, maximum mobilization of activists inside and abroad. And 5, a detailed plan for Iran's renewal after the fall of this regime, which we call the Iran Prosperity Project, or IPP. These are not isolated steps, but parts of a single effort. Pressure isolates the regime, support strengthens the people, defections accelerates its collapse, mobilization creates momentum, and planning ensures that victory gives rise to a stable and prosperous Iran. It ensures that Iran's story will not end in exile. It will be written anew by her own children. Here in Los Angeles, at the center of the Iranian diaspora, I want to reflect in particular on two of these pillars: the power of mobilization and the promise of the Iran Prosperity Project. This summer in Munich, we witnessed a milestone in our struggle. Hundreds of activists and opposition figures and organizations representing Iran's political, cultural, and religious diversity came together under one roof. For the first time in decades, voices too often kept apart spoke with one another, and more importantly, spoke as one to the world. Iran's future will be built together. Munich was the day we stopped asking if unity was possible and proved that it was. It demonstrated that Iran's democratic opposition is not only willing but able to work effectively, collectively, to plan strategically, and to move beyond words into coordinated action. What was once considered impossible became visible, and it must now become irreversible. I extend my hand again tonight to all who embrace this challenge and invite them to join us. Munich transformed conviction into coordinated action. The Iran Prosperity Project answers the question of what we do when victory is won. It is the answer to all those, including many of you here tonight, who have long asked, is there a plan? When I first spoke of the Iran Prosperity Project, it was a commitment that we would not arrive at the day of freedom unprepared. Today, it has grown from the aspiration for something better into the architecture of Iran's bright future. The framework is being built piece by piece so that when the time comes, Iran can move swiftly from collapse to renewal. In May, we convened the first IPP conference, releasing 6 policy papers that provide concrete proposals to rebuild vital institutions, stabilize the economy, and begin national recovery. In July, we published the emergency phase booklet, a roadmap for the critical first 100 days, ensuring basic services, stabilizing the currency, and restoring law and order. And we opened the doors of this project to every Iranian, inviting critique, input, and debate. Thousands responded. For the first time in our modern history, a national blueprint on this scale is being shaped not behind closed doors, but in dialogue with the people themselves. We do this because our task is not to admire the ruins of history, but to lay the foundations of tomorrow. And because the glory of Iran is not behind us, it lies ahead, waiting to be reclaimed. My friends, we are not alone in this vision. In 2023, I went to Israel to rekindle the ancient bonds between the Jewish and Iranian people. After all, we have had ties for more than 2,500 years, dating back to Cyrus the Great. I was warmly received by President Herzog and Prime Minister Netanyahu, and not only other political leaders, but by the Israeli people themselves, including many Iranian Israelis. Together, we took the first steps towards rebuilding the strong partnership between a free Iran and Israel. That mission continues today. Just days ago, my delegation of economic and scientific experts working on IPP returned to Israel. They met with President Herzog. They were hosted by Minister of Science, Innovation and Technology, Gila Gamliel, and engaged Israel's top scientists and engineers on practical solutions to Iran's most pressing crises: water shortages, electricity blackouts, and environmental collapse caused by the regime. It was not just about policy, it was about our people. At the Nova Festival Memorial, they met with the mother of a young woman, Maya, massacred by Hamas on October 7th, and listened to one of the survivors recount the horrific details of that morning. The delegation and Minister Gamliel then planted a tree of life in memory of both the Israeli and Iranian victims of the Islamic Republic and its terrorist proxies. They honored Amir Abbas Hoveyda, Nader Jahanbani, Mahsa Amini, whose life and memory we honor today, but also Yaron, Sarah, and Maya. They declared clearly that while, for now, people's pain is shared, so is our future. This mission advanced what we now call the Cyrus Accords, a framework for peace and cooperation between Israel and a free, democratic, prosperous Iran. The areas of cooperation are real and tangible: water and agricultural technology, energy, health, trade, culture, and tourism. These are the foundations of a partnership that will not wait to be imagined someday, but is being built today. This visit was not just about technical cooperation. It was a statement about the future we envision. Iran post-Islamic Republic will not return to the world as a problem to be managed, but as a partner to be trusted, a nation ready to contribute to peace and prosperity alongside its neighbors. The people do not just want this, they are fighting for it. In Iran, a nation has risen. From the December 2017 protests, the Deimah uprising, to the November 2019 Aban movement, to the protests in the aftermath of Mahsa's murder, the people of Iran have shown their commitment to this national struggle. As a response to their bravery and at their call, I too have stepped forward. Working with my team and a broad coalition of dissidents, activists, and experts, we have accepted the responsibility to lead in this critical chapter of Iran's history. But our challenge is not just to save our nation. It is to build the systems, institutions, and civic ethics that will sustain our freedom for generations to come. As I have often said, we are not here for the quick fix. We are here for the long-term solutions, and those are only possible with broad participation. So today, I am here to ask you to join in this fight, to be a part of this campaign. To the Iranian business leaders here in Los Angeles, this is your call. Begin preparing now. Consider how your companies, your capital, your experience can contribute to rebuilding our country. Ask yourselves, how will you invest in Iran's recovery? How will you help restore her economy, her infrastructure, her industries? The Iran Prosperity Project is not just a blueprint. It is your invitation to plan, to prepare, and to act. Let me speak plainly to our diaspora here in Los Angeles and across the world. Iranians are fighting and dying on the streets of our homeland. Mothers and fathers bury their children. Young men and women risk their lives each day for the chance of freedom. And in those moments, they look outward to our successful diaspora and they ask, are you with us? They look to you and ask, do you want to help or watch the opportunities before us pass us by? The diaspora must decide, are you spectators of Iran's struggle or partners in her liberation? That question must be answered, not tomorrow, now. You are not exiles of a fallen past. Together we are architects of a coming future. I know this community. I know its generosity, its success, its pride. But history will not measure us by nostalgia. It will be measured by our action. The question before us is whether Iran will survive only as nostalgia, memories of music, food, and culture, or whether we will seize this moment to reclaim our country and craft a living legacy for the next generations. Cyrus the Great did not preserve civilization by memory alone. He built, he acted, he wrote history. And to the students here tonight, my fellow Trojans and the youth of this great university, I want to speak directly. In Iran, your peers, Gen Z, have faced down bullets, batons, and prisons. I call them Gen V for victory. They are risking their lives for the future of their country. You too have a role. You are free to organize, to study, to advocate. Use that freedom. Stand with your peers in Iran. Build solidarity networks. Contribute your knowledge, your creativity, your energy. Align the wisdom of this campus with the courage of Iran's youth. Gen V is not a slogan. It is a commitment. And I ask you to join them. Indeed, to an extent, your fight is won, because even here in the West, we are not untouched by the reach of the Islamic Republic. For decades, Tehran has sought to project its propaganda into your universities, your campuses, your public discourse. It funds front groups, nurtured so-called cultural exchange programs, and work to normalize its narrative. The goal is always the same: to silence dissidents, to confuse the naive, and to weaken solidarity with the Iranian people. But they don't just try to promote themselves or silence opponents. They target others as well. We saw the tragic consequences of this in the wake of October 7th. Anti-Semitism surged on campuses across America, and alongside it came talking points drawn straight from the playbook of the Islamic Republic and its proxies. Let us be clear. This hatred was not spontaneous. It was fomented, encouraged, and amplified by the Islamic regime. When chants glorify violence, when the regime's apologists masquerade as academics, this is not free debate. It is the export of tyranny into the hearts of free institutions. It is also a broader war on free speech and on the very foundations of Western civilization. To the students of USC and other universities, do not be deceived. Iran's youth are being jailed and beaten for demanding freedom, while here the regime spends money to whitewash its crimes, to undermine America's democratic institutions, and to sow division across your society. Resist this manipulation. Stand with your peers in Iran who ask for truth, justice, and solidarity. A university must be a place of free inquiry, not a stage for the propaganda of dictators. But my friends, the Islamic Republic is weak, divided, and vulnerable. The people have withdrawn their support. Its leadership has fractured, and tens of thousands are offering to defect. Its proxies are cornered. The only question is not if it will fall, but when. But I want to be clear that while the regime is weak and vulnerable, It will only finally fall if the Iranian people rise up again. They know the future of Iran is in their hands. My job, with a unified democratic opposition, is to make sure the conditions for success are stacked in their favor. When that day comes, our job is to ensure that Iran does not collapse into chaos, but rises into freedom. Mobilization makes that possible. The Iran Prosperity Project makes it real, and the courage of our people makes it inevitable. Iran's story will not end in tragedy. Together we will write its renaissance. I will not stand on the sideline of history. I intend to shape it. But to win, I need you with me, and our compatriots do as well. So thank you. May God bless the people of Iran, and may freedom soon bless our homeland. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, salam va darud. Can everyone hear me? Okay, wonderful. Your Majesty, thank you for that.
Of course, my pleasure.
Thank you so much. افتخار بزرگی است که شما در این گرد همایی شرکت کردید. So I just thanked all of you and His Majesty for coming tonight, for participating. And as Steve and Provost Guzman so graciously said, I'm Tabby Raphael. I had the honor of last sitting down with you in February 2024 for a cover story for the Jewish Journal of Greater Los Angeles. And I don't know if you know, but in the paper's 40-year history, that was the most read story. And it's still going viral today. And it's being read in Iran. And the best part about what you did in granting me that interview was that you brought together readers inside Iran with Jewish Americans here. And I can't thank you enough for that. I also want to welcome our dear Princess Noor tonight. And not to put you on the spot, but I happen to know a thing or two about being the daughter of an amazing Iranian father who's here. And I heard you back in the green room, and I thought I heard you, Princess Noor, say, Baba. And I want to tell you, it warmed my heart. Daughters are the best. Again, I want to thank His Majesty. I want to thank Kamran. Thank you. Thank you to Steve Ross, Lisa Ansel. This was your vision, wasn't it, Lisa? This was your vision. Take it in, enjoy it. And the Levy family, I don't have to tell you, you stand on the shoulders of giants. And you've carried that legacy above and beyond. Thank you. And finally, to our students today. So years ago, not too long, when eggs were cheaper and masks were for surgeons, that's okay, you can laugh. It's been a heavy week. I was in the master's program here in the public diplomacy program. And I was saving for my books and for meals and things, and I never thought that I would be here on stage interviewing you at my alma mater, where I made so many memories and discovered myself. It's really a special moment for me. Thank you.
For me too.
So for the students here, I just want to tell you, if I was a former student here, and by the grace of God and Lisa and Sal, I'm sitting on stage interviewing the Crown Prince, dream big, problem solve in big ways, and challenge yourself until the discomfort of that challenge takes you through to the other side, because your dreams are waiting for you there. Now, a lot has transpired since we spoke in February 2024, hasn't it? I was asking you questions about the future of Hezbollah. I was asking you about the future of Hamas and the Houthis. We were speaking, of course, about the regime. But I want to start my first question to you with something not political, but very personal. And this is it. In preparing the last few months for our event tonight, I had to think about you every day. I had to research you. You were in my Google alerts because I needed to know, what were you saying? What were you doing? What were you participating in? What were you commenting on? And that's when I realized that to be in your shoes, you must truly think about your homeland morning, noon, and night. And while I recommend that anyone, Jewish or not Jewish, who wants to go on a one-day Saturday sabbatical from their phones, as Judaism recommends, it's good for everything, I truly imagine that day and night you're thinking about Iran, most likely even more than Iranian leaders, because I read their tweets and they're all about people who are not in Iran. And this is my first question for you. As someone who no doubt thinks, reads, processes everything about Iran day and night, you receive hundreds of thousands of messages from Iranians on the ground. You are an Iranian patriot. Now, in America, in recent years, this term patriot has been claimed and defined along partisan lines. It wasn't always that way. And my first question to you really is, how do you define this term, patriot, not through perhaps an American lens, but through your own? What does it mean to be a patriot who maintains a connection with a people, a land, and possibly most importantly, their future?
No, I think it's a very important question. I would first say, look, as a parent, you always have unconditional love and support for your children. And in the same way, the way I would describe what patriotism at least means to me is your unconditional commitment and support for the betterment of your nation, your people, their lives. And it's a commitment that maybe rises as a sense of duty. It's something that doesn't have to necessarily mean that there's something you need out of your own self-interest. You do it completely selflessly because you're dedicated to a cause. And I suppose when I've been doing it for 46 years, that simply means that I'm willing to sacrifice everything personally so that a country that deserves much better than where we are at right now, and the fact that I was saying to one journalist a few days ago that I'm tired of having my cheek and my shoulder wet with the tears of grieving mothers or dissidents who have been shot in protests, and one day we have to have those tears transformed into smiles and the prospect of a future. That's worth putting all the thing on the line and that commitment. So that's the way I would define it. One thing is interesting, patriotism is not designed by a narrative that has to fit one category versus the other. People can be patriotic and differ in opinion totally. So I separate your commitment to your country, not necessarily on the basis of your ideology, but that sense of commitment and dedication to your country. So that's where I think we have to rehabilitate the twisted aspect that you just referred to.
I love that, rehabilitate. We need a little rehabilitation in America now. Now, as you know, Jews have been a diasporic people for 2,700 years, coinciding with the arrival of the first Jews of Persia. And the diaspora is really one of the fundamental underpinnings of Jewish life. It really is, and of thought, and especially of continuity, right? Especially since I think the establishment of the modern state of Israel in 1948. Now, the Islamic Revolution, as you know, sent most Iranian Jews into a second diaspora. I'm going to repeat that again. From my community, you see, we experienced two diasporas, from originally Israel and from 1979 from Iran. I'd love it if you could share about some of your thoughts and your hopes about the role of the Iranian Jewish diaspora, many of whom are here tonight, in shaping the future of Iran and the Iranian people sort of more broadly, right? Because I heard your beautiful call to action here.
Well, look, I was talking about the fact that we've seen that when given an opportunity, how much the role of the Jewish community, whether they were in Iran or now, many of them had to, unfortunately, be forced to exile and leave everything behind, and how they rebuild their lives out of nothing and being very successful. It proves how valuable this community can be, whether or not they return to the country or not, but they can contribute. The first generation of in Iran's modern history, right before the revolution, many industrialists were there of Jewish persuasion. We had ministers in government, we had representatives in the Majlis, we had people serving in the armed forces, completely different than what we see today. And all of that tracks back to how important that community then in Iran before the revolution were contributing to our country's progress. And I think many people forget one thing about the Iranian Jews. It was not just about Iranian Jews, it was about Jews around the world during the Second World War. Many people turned their backs to the Jewish communities. Iran was the only Muslim country in the area that was giving refuge and nationality to Jews that were fleeing from Poland and other places, and they also contributed in the advance of the progress in and that's the relationship. Ever since my trip to Israel a couple years ago, many of you have noticed that in demonstration against the regime, often you see the Israeli flag right next to the Iranian flag. And I think this is symbolic not just because of how we can contribute, or the Iranian Jewish community can contribute, but how it is perceived in Israel and the rest of the world of how different it could be in that future, the relationship, in my view, of two countries that are true strategic partners, unlike a regime that wants to wipe that country from the face of the earth. And I think the role of the Jewish community is to send a message to our own country and to the rest of the world. We've been there before, and we can do it again. And if the first generation of Iranians who had to flee Iran because they were persecuted immediately just for being Jewish, as they did to the Baha'is, as they did to the other denominations, how critical they can be in reconstructing not only our own country, but the link they represent internationally. And I think that's a huge human asset. That's a huge potential. I recall the time that at the expense of the Iranian government, we were sending students to study abroad. Many of them came here in California, in USC, in UCLA. Unfortunately, at the time, many of them turned to be confederacioni, and they were sort of under Marxist ideology or what have you, and pretty much, I think, were of a totally different direction. But now, imagine, after all the efforts and over that expenditure, how much it takes to establish a rapport, to have an ambassador come here. Now we have millions of ambassadors across the world, from New Zealand to Canada, from Japan to the United States, and they all represent, the diaspora represents. I'm not just isolating it to the Jewish community, but because we have many members of that community here tonight, we are more specific perhaps to their role. But this the overall image of an Iran that is democratic, an Iran that is secular, will guarantee the equality of all Iranian citizens under the law of the land, irrespective of their genders, their religious beliefs, their political ideas, their ethnic background. That's what we want to have being the foundation of our future. And having learned the lesson, having learned the pain of exile, having to rebuild your lives all over again, I think this is a lot of knowledge and experience that puts Iran in the best position to come out of the tunnel with a clear vision of its future. This collective experience, sad, tragic, painful, is the foundation that will help us bring about that culture, bring about that idea why we can have diversity, why we can have tolerance, why we can respect each other and help each other, and make sure that we build a foundation that lasts. Because all the freedoms that we enjoy here in America today, a country of liberty, that's exactly the same freedoms that we want in Iran. And that has been the message of Iran all along, the Iranian people all the time. The regime has been chanting from day one, death to America, death to Israel. And Iran is at home. In fact, and I'd like to stress this one point because I think it's important for those who may not remember, many countries that are so-called US allies in the region, when 9/11 happened, there was celebration on their streets, in Cairo, in Riyadh, in Beirut, and elsewhere. The only country where on the night of that attack, people had candlelight vigil in sympathy for the victims of that attack were the people of Iran. And it should be important here for our diaspora, whether they're Jewish, Christian, Muslim, but basically remind our American friends of why it is that putting an end to this evil regime, how different the relationship of Iran will be with the world, the demeanor of the Iranian people. People who want to be the architects of peace as opposed to a regime that has been the warmongers all along. What separates us from the rest of the free world and have Iran rejoin the community of nations has to be our liberation. And we need to have your help because sometimes it's difficult, especially when you're fighting extremely repressive dictatorships. So I think this is an opportunity to realize not only the potential of what Iran can be tomorrow to the interest of the Iranian people themselves, but also how important it will be for the interest of the American people and US interest. This goes hand in glove, and this is an opportunity we are right now in front of us in the next year or two.
You know, you're so right. Iranian diasporas abroad actually they contribute so much, not just of course in the US, whether you're in Toronto or in Milan in Italy or anywhere else around the world. Ironically, they make Iran look good because they themselves are educated and modernized, right? Roshanfik. I did not know about Iranians' candlelight vigil on 9/11. I knew that the only memorial to 9/11 outside of the US happens to be in Israel. And this tells you what Israel and Iran could be as part of some future Cyrus Accords. I want to remind all of us tonight that September 16th, today, is to the date the 3-year anniversary of the death of Mahsa Jina Amini. 3 years. Now, yesterday, the 15th, marked the 5-year anniversary of the Abraham Accords, as you know. And a few days ago, the 13th, marked the 3-month anniversary of Operation Midnight Hammer, also known as the moment in our lives most of us won't forget, the 12-day war between Iran and Israel. And I want to speak to you about this. 3 months is a short amount of time, right? Most of us here, hopefully, we still remember this war. We were glued to our phones. it once seemed unimaginable no matter how much we spoke about it. And since the end of that war, many of us here who, like you said, represent something through the simple virtue of being in the Iranian diaspora, many of us, including myself, weekly, were approached by non-Iranians and asked, during this 12-day war, it seemed as if the regime may fall as well. What I want to ask you is, how would you answer that question to the average American who shook your hand and who said, gosh, I thought you guys would have freedom after. And it sounds so simple, and I think you and I both sort of know the complexities behind it, that you just can't go in like that. But I wanted to know if you could provide an answer for the average American on this, and how you yourself processed those 12 historic days. Because as that war endured, I thought of you every now and then, and I thought, my goodness, what must the Crown Prince be thinking right now? So it's a two-part question, which is, what did we exactly see, and why didn't we see perhaps what many wanted to see? And how did you yourself process it, watching it from the US?
Before I dwell into the facts, for years I've been arguing that if appeasement as a tactic, if containment as an approach, and all the demeanor that the Western countries in particular demonstrated vis-a-vis this regime, sooner or later, this regime is going to drive us to conflict. And unfortunately, it did. Yeah. This is not the Iranian people's war. This is Ali Khamenei's war. The regime is responsible for bringing us to this situation. Nobody wants to have conflict. And I'm certain that Israelis wouldn't want to have had to take this action. But I think what broke the whole thing was October 7th, and that triggered the response against Hezbollah, against Hamas, and the downfall of Assad in Syria. And as far as it relates to Iran, I think many Iranians know that, and this is one of the reasons it has lasted so far and so long, is because the absolute repressive nature of the regime. You cannot expect people to rise as an ultimate uprising when they are systematically so violently repressed. So the playing field had to be equalized. I think the actual result of this 12-day war, which was clearly a war against the regime and not the people of Iran, let's make that distinction. It was trying to weaken the system by hitting it where its apparatus of surveillance, intelligence ministry, its apparatus of repression, IRGC target, and the elimination of many of its commanders was one way to weaken the regime, which in fact is more favorable to the people who now have a maybe better chance to stand up to this regime. So it's not just an isolated element, it's part of the overall puzzle, but I think it's one of the key factors. Because we are not trying to get our liberation via foreign occupation. We saw the mess that happened after the fall of Saddam Hussein, and that certainly is not the scenario I've ever called for. But I believe that the best way to look at this is that you right now have the boots on the ground, which are not American soldiers in Kabul or in Baghdad, but the Iranian people being the boots on the ground.
Wow.
You have ways to fund this, so you don't have to say, oh my God, I'm an American taxpayer. Are they going to use my money to fund yet another endless campaign overseas by sending our troops, and our money is going to be spent on that? No, because I think there's enough money to fund a campaign without a single penny of your money as a taxpayer be spent on it. For instance, I've been proposing many times to legislators in this country, why not unfreeze the assets that you have that belongs to the Iranian people themselves? It's the people of Iran's money. And repurpose those assets to fund, for example, labor strikes in Iran. Because in my view, the quickest way to attain a state of forcing the regime to paralysis, its collapse, will be the ultimate culmination of a nationwide labor strikes in Iran. So if we manage to do these things, and this is where we have to work together, the community, to impress upon decision makers and policy makers and legislators that this is a win-win scenario. You are empowering the Iranian people by giving them the best possible support. Of course, there's extensive language on this. I will invite all of you to check out what Nufti has done as an organization and explained our approach of the strategy of maximum support, which is very much explained in detail of what and how this could be done, and also IPP. So when you get a chance,
Can I
by all
add
means
for
do-
that? So this is nufti.org, nufdi.org. This is all laid out on there.
And this is one way that we can basically maximize the support for the people. So, we should not just isolate the question of what happened as a result of the 12-day war, but it certainly has weakened the regime to a point that it has never been as weak as it is in the past 46 years. So it creates an opportunity, a real opportunity this time. But many other things have to happen as well. But it's a step in the right direction, I think. And I think many Iranians saw it, that this is one way that the apparatus of brutality and surveillance is definitely sugar. I mean, look, Ali Khamenei was hiding underground for a week or so. You mentioned about Mahsa's anniversary. Yesterday and last night in Iran, people were chanting death to the dictator. Go check social media. I'm sure many of you have seen it. They chanted death to the dictator. Mi jangin, mi mirin, Iran ro pas migirin. People
We're gonna fight. We're gonna die. We're gonna get back Iran.
People were marching, many of them all dressed in black. That showed organization, coordination. These are things that are happening as we speak all the way across the world here in Los Angeles, in Iran proper. So I think people are ready. They need that extra level of confidence and help. So this is really part of what I'm trying to do internationally, of bringing more awareness to our struggle, seeing what way foreigners can help us in this campaign, and more specifically, how important the role of the diaspora of each country is. And I'm particularly happy to be in a university environment today, because look, when you look at modern history, most critical political movements that put an end to unwanted system started by students in universities. And therefore, I think the natural expectation that I would have, whether you are an Iranian student or international student studying in any school, is to realize that many campaigns that led to putting an end to unwanted systems, whether it was Nelson Mandela in South Africa, whether it was Lech Walesa in Solidarity in Poland, and many other movements of this nature, was driven primarily and forced the narrative onto governments and people that had to be answered to it from universities. Look at Iran. Most of the movements started. The first uprising started back at the time that there was these promises of reform during Khatami's era and Hijdah Tir, and what happened then? If you rewind tape all the way back then, it was Iranian students in universities that started it. So I think that connection is so important and so vital, especially that unlike almost 30 years ago, you didn't have platforms like WhatsApp or Signal or Instagram or Telegram or all those platforms, and how important the role of social media has come into connectivity and awareness, and even influencers that can, in fact, direct the narrative. That's so important. These are the tools that we should utilize that we didn't have 40 years ago when I started. I remember the first message I sent from Cairo was in old telex machine. You might hardly even find it in the Smithsonian Museum these days, if there's one left. But now we have our smartphones. You can talk to each other in the middle of the night out of nowhere. And that's many times how I communicate with my fellow compatriots back home, by the use of social media, to the extent that they can, of course, be willing to take the risk, because they have to immediately wipe out any text message or anything that they send to me, because as you know, the regime is very scrutinizing them. Anyway, I think this is an opportunity again. And so the answer, to come back to your question of what they can think, is that all of this is part of the process. It's very hard to put a timetable in terms of predicting when a totalitarian regime collapses. It's very hard. But one thing is certain, they will collapse. History has proven it.
Especially if Moscow has a plane ready for them to depart and go over there. Yeah.
Well, at the time of the Green Movement, Khomeini's plane was fueled and ready to bail out. It only came to a stop where the movement itself sort of stuttered, and it was during the Obama administration. And well, I don't want to rehash history because let's focus more on what's to come. But lesson learned from that time.
Really, since it has been a hard week, in particular here, I really want the audience to appreciate that when the Crown Prince and I last sat down together in February 2024, everything was different. Assad was in charge of Syria. Hezbollah had a massive arsenal of thousands of rockets. Hamas was very active. God, I still can't believe it. I still actually can't believe it. And I often wondered about you during the 12-day war, whether you slept at all and how you could have and how you must have just been glued to everything. Can I get personal again? Is that okay with each of you? Can I get a little personal? Well, not all at once. I can't take the chorus. May I get personal? Yes. Thank you. On February 1st, 1979, Peter Jennings boards a plane, along with other foreign correspondents, and he asks Ayatollah Khomeini how he feels about his return after a 15-year exile, 15 years, Iraq and then Paris. And this is the question of the hour, right? Your father and your family had left the country, I believe, January 16th. If you haven't seen the video of this, it's available. I want you to watch it. Peter Jennings comes and he asks Khomeini via translator, how do you feel about your return to Iran? And Khomeini's famous answer was, Hich, which translates to nothing. One could make the argument that over the last 46 years, those who have led, it's not a good verb, the regime has in one way or another sort of done nothing, contributed nothing, turned everything into nothing. And I want to ask you here in front of everyone tonight that if whether in 6 months or 18 months' time, you returned to Mehrabad Airport in Tehran, with referendums, right, through your vision, and a correspondent asked you, how do you feel returning to Iran? What would be that answer?
Very simple. I'm here to serve. Let's go to work. Thank you.
How are you doing on time?
Thank you so much.
Maybe I should have ended with that question, but I actually, the last one is a good one too. You touched on this a little bit, but I want to go back to it because it's particularly concerning to me because you see, my family and I escaped post-revolutionary Iran thinking we would never have to look back on the repression. Now, in Dearborn, Michigan, last April in 2024, you had a rally for Quds Day, and there was an image, someone was holding an image of Ayatollah Khomeini. And during the recent war in June, we saw it very strangely during this 12-day war that many members of the West and Gen Z seemed to openly support the regime in Iran. It was shocking. This fall, there's a class being taught at Yale by Robert Malley, who lost his security clearance. The class is titled Adversaries by Design, Deconstructing the Iran-US Relationship, as though someone went in and put the regime, at the throat of the Americans. And the class will actually feature, the class that's starting this fall at Yale, required reading by former regime officials and invitations to speak by former regime officials at Yale. We use this as an example, but how concerned are you about the true increase in normalization of the regime? One that I don't remember when I was here at USC. And are some of these nefarious messages, on the one hand, being directed to Gen Z, let's call it Gen V in Iran, let's call it Gen Z in America in particular. How can Gen Z counter these messages? And what we know is really a well-funded coordination campaign.
Of course, and we can talk hours about this, but to put it in simpler and shorter terms, let me say one thing. This regime in its DNA is simply incompatible with a country like the United States. Not the people, the regime and its ideology. In fact, one thing that would be proof is that if the US Embassy was to open up in Iran today under this regime, the line to get a visa to get the hell out of there would be a mile long.
Wow.
To come to America. So normalizing with whom? It will never be normalized with the regime. And this is what the Bob Marleys of this world don't understand and don't get. That this regime is alien to its own people. It's a regime that came in by saying Ummat, as opposed to Millat. Millat being nation, Ummat being those who pertain to that religion. And that's what the regime is pushing. That's why it's there. That's why we have this miserable state of the economy, because every penny that the regime is spending is not on the starving people of Iran. It's not to build schools or universities or hospitals. It's to fund Hamas, it's to fund Hezbollah, it's to fund their campaign of pushing that narrative, as I was telling to my speech. I was a few weeks ago in England, and I was talking to British parliamentarians as well as former prime ministers of the country. And in fact, we showed them the mapping of many organizations and institutions that are supposedly cultural centers. It's all under the purview of Khamenei himself. In Britain, that are used to target the Jewish community, journalists, dissidents, and a lot of it is being replicated in the rest of the world. And so we have to really be vigilant and not fall for that. But it's not just to be aware of what the regime is up to that is sufficient. We have to counter it. We have to push back. When I say we, I mean because what's at stake here is everything that we cherish, the common values that the Iranian people share with the Americans, as opposed to a regime that is in complete contradiction with that path. So to come and say that we have to accept that aspect of contradiction and that is what should be normalized, I don't think that's normal thinking. What is the agenda here? I'll let you use your own imagination. But one thing is for clear. What's at stake here is freedom, liberty, human rights. Something that we cherish and we want for ourselves. And the only guarantee of it is the rule of law. And that through a constitution that provides every Iranian citizen equal rights under the law. As opposed to a regime that from the very beginning brought in discrimination, basically made Iranian women overnight second-class citizens, not to mention all the discrimination against people of other faiths and even ethnic groups. And that's why we're in the mess we are today. You want to normalize with that and accept that as a reality? God help us all. And even when we saw what happened to Kirk and his murder, you know, if free speech is not tolerated anymore in America, I don't know which direction this world is going. All of this should be a wake-up call, that this is serious. There are people with evil intentions behind all this who are funding it, who are nurturing it, and we cannot just sit back and expect a miracle to happen. This is a call to action that all of us should have.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I wanted to actually spontaneously ask if we could please recognize USC security tonight for everything we've done. Now, I don't know if you've read King of Kings, the new book by Scott Anderson that came out last month in August.
Not yet. These days I've barely had time to scratch my head literally.
I know.
Maybe on the plane while I travel.
I know. He quotes a secret CIA report 5 months before the revolution. This secret CIA report promised, quote, that the Shah will be an active participant in Iranian life well into the 1980s. And, quote, there will be no radical change in Iranian political behavior in the near future. Now, do you see a repeat of this miscalculation, specifically of the power of fanatics, but do you see a certain miscalculation by Western governments who may not or do not want to really see the power of sort of radical Islam converging with left-wing fascism in their own countries, be it Europe or anywhere else? Are we seriously miscalculating here again?
Before we get to that, since you brought it up, well, I know another author who wrote the book Fall from Heaven, Andrew Cooper. I'm sure many of you have read it. And I was trying to do a project with him, and at the time, this is about 4 or 5 years ago, he was based in, I don't know if he still is in Brussels, but anyway, he was based in Brussels. He had an apartment from where he would do some research, but also teach some classes in Belgium. And he said that he was about a mile away from where the Royal Palace is in Brussels. And he said, in my district, Islamists are trying to force legislation to segregate buses so women and men ride separately. This is Brussels we're talking about. The problem is that a lack of audacity and I would say a great level of you could call it cowardness or misinterpretation led Europe to be in the mess it is today. And the fear from having to confront radical Islamists and be called a Islamophobe is one of the reasons why we see what's panning out in Europe these days. If you've been in Paris or London lately, what happened during Ashura, they had more Sinezan in London than they did in Tehran. I mean,
can I? It's the self-flagellation, and he's saying that there was more of it happening in London than there was even in Iran.
So, it's one thing in the calculation of what's there written on the subject. What I can tell you is that, yes, some miscalculation is part of the problem. It's not all of the problem. But here's an opportunity for me to say one thing. Whether it was vis-a-vis what happened in Iran, or for that matter, what happened after the collapse of the Soviet Union. As we speak, and I've asked the question, by the way, I've asked the question from those people who are connected to the administration, the current administration, or legislation, what's your plan B? All I hear about is dealing with the status quo. But the what if is not really planned. The West was really not prepared how to deal with the post-Soviet collapse. And lesson learned from history should put us in a position that you should always anticipate the eventuality and have a plan for it and be prepared for it. So it's not just only in some cases some miscalculation, but it's not being prepared at all.
You're asking what was their plan B for a radicalized population?
I'm talking about the fact that when the Berlin Wall came down, how many people thought it was going to happen that fast, but it finally did. But what after? And in the sense of the collapse of the Soviet Union, that was a huge game changer for the entire world. But how much were we prepared for the aftermath of no longer having a totalitarian communist system in place? So in that line of thinking, imagine in Iran where the Islamic regime is no longer there, as opposed to right now the focus being on the nuclear talks and diplomacy and everything that we're dealing with. If you are talking from a point of view of foreign policy dealing with the current situation. Let's say the regime was to collapse. What we're trying to do from our end is, of course, provide with a scenario and a roadmap to how we deal with the post-regime. How do we deal with the period of transition? But it's also very important to be on the same frequency, especially on some key government in the West, to understand what it is that needs to happen so we ensure that, unlike what happened in, let's say, the collapse of the Iraqi regime after Saddam Hussein and what came after, this time we're talking about how all this can be managed. I think that's a very big, that's the question I'm always asked the most, whether from Iranians or especially from foreigners. What will happen next? Or how do we know that there won't be a vacuum after this? Or are we going to yet have a scenario of a failed state? These are issues that we have to address. So, I think instead of focusing on whether it's been miscalculated, it's more a matter of planning and anticipation that should be the better focus or the better question, frankly, to ask. So part of my efforts is to, by means of talking exactly about these things, and also those who are in charge of making policy or making such decision, to understand how all of this can come into place, how the Iranian opposition and secular democrat forces, activists inside and outside Iran, could be in better positions to be successful by understanding that those who are willing to stand with them in this effort understand the mechanics of how all of that can happen, how we can plan it and anticipate it, rather than be caught by surprise. You wake up in the morning, Bashar Assad is no longer there. That's literally what happened.
Yeah.
So I think these are the kind of discussions that are very helpful and very important in shaping, and I think public opinion is important. First and foremost, the public has to be aware, because at the end of the day, politicians understand one thing, particularly legislators. They are there and they're trying to get reelected. That's really what it is. I've learned it. It took me 40 years to finally come up with the reality that they won't do it out of sheer passion or compassion. They do it out of interest. So the constituency that they each have will have some demands. That's where I think being proactive, whether you're a member of the diaspora or citizens of that country, what is your ask for your government? Apartheid came to an end because people said we can no longer justify the continuation of a racist system in a country. Out of public pressure, out of media pressure, finally many governments who had no problem doing business with the South African regime had to cave in under public pressure and public demand. That's how you change the narrative. That's how you change the discourse, and being proactive. And I believe in people's power at the end of the day. So we need to make sure that they have the best chance to succeed. And we need to be prepared for that, because it will happen sooner or later.
We mark your words. Now, before we get to audience Q&A, I want to pose my last question, which is, what do you hope will be your legacy?
That in all these years, I've tried to keep the torch alive so that people, we know that they should not ever give up on their hopes for a better future, and that they will remember that I've done that beyond just being in a state of mind of hoping for something, but believing that it can be done. I've been saying lately in my campaign that I have to move the needle from hope to belief. That we should not just hope. but believe that it can be done. Because frankly, we have the natural resources and the human resources it takes to get that country back on its feet. What we need, first and foremost, is the opportunity, which is denied us by a regime that stands between us and those dreams. And that's why it's important to eliminate this regime, because it's rotten at its core. And we need to persuade those who fear the terminology. As you said, patriotism is being twisted in its meaning. So does regime change. There's an allergy inside the Beltway in Washington. The minute rise regime change, oh my God, here we go again.
Really?
Although, just because it was poorly executed elsewhere doesn't make it a bad concept. In fact, it's the only solution, come to think of it. And that's also part of the challenge of how to explain why is regime change necessary and the ultimate solution to solve the Iranian people's problem to liberate themselves. Iran is not going to be liberated by means of reform. Iran will be liberated by putting an end to a regime that denies them their fundamental rights. Pure and simple.
Wow. We're ready for audience Q&A? Thank you. I'm accepting checks. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Okay. Aha. Okay. Now, you keep being asked about relationships with Israel. What about future relations with the UAE and Saudi Arabia? And I think this says, and the US. We address that.
Again, what I said at the press conference in Tel Aviv, when I was there 2 years ago, that's when I first used the word Cyrus Accords. To elevate it beyond the Abraham Accords, which of course meant the participation of many of those countries in the area that were willing to normalize relation with Israel until it was sabotaged by the Islamic regime. Saudi Arabia, those countries, and of course, it's our neighborhood. And it's not just limited to a bilateral relationship. But I think what will forge the stability element is that Iran has to be a participant. Because I don't think the Abraham Accords will survive without Iran's participation into that equation. Not the Iran of the mullahs, but the Iran where its people and the democratic system is dedicated to fomenting a relationship of mutual respect, of respect for our mutual sovereignties, and work together regionally as partners, really. But it's important to understand that for a democratic Iran, it starts with having a strategic ally in a country that, frankly, is the only democracy in the Middle East as we speak. It's the only true democracy. And I think it behooves us to understand that how critical a democratic Iran will change the entire equation and enable the liberalization process to also occur elsewhere, which was always a big challenge, particularly during the Cold War, because the ideal is still to march towards democratization, but it also is a matter of partnership. So, of course, this is not just a bilateral issue, but I think it's critical that the role that Iran and Israel can play in bringing that element of stability that enables all of us in the region to benefit from it is critically important. It can happen without Israel and Iran playing a part in it. And of course, the rest of our neighbors, I believe, understand that part as well.
And hopefully they understand in Washington too, what you're saying. Now, someone is asking, in light of the Iranian regime's sophisticated means of surveillance and repression, how do you expect the people of Iran to rise up and topple the regime without external intervention?
Well, look, when Starlink is sent as a means for people to have access to the internet, despite the regime attempts to cut them off from communication, these are the useful way that they can, in fact, have foreign assistance. If you mean in the question, if it's implying that we need to have some kind of a foreign force invading our country, to me, that's always been a red line. For multiple reasons. I think Iran's liberation with the help of democratic countries should put us in a situation to say that your assistance, we are grateful for it, but we never should be indebted to something. We should never say that our liberation comes as a result of occupation. Maybe it happened during the Second World War, but I don't think in the 21st century that's in principle an accepted consequence, because you're basically, putting a price on your liberty. And I don't think we need to go in that direction. Frankly, I really think that if everything that I've been calling for and our organizations have been calling for in terms of maximum support were to in fact be implemented, and again, I invite all of you to scrutinize those documents and what we propose both in IPP and also through this campaign of maximum support, you will see that there are more than enough elements in it that if they were implemented will not require what this question implies of some form of foreign intervention. So we have to give those elements a chance to succeed before opting for less desirable scenarios. So I think this ought to be one area that we can all get more momentum behind it. I think, as I said again, for the governments to actually implement it, part of it is a reset of their overall strategy of abandoning containment and appeasement for the benefit of some other form of interaction, and this time making the Iranian people their counterpart as opposed to the regime. That's part of it. But a lot of that legislation, a lot of the momentum that has to happen has to be public demand and public pressure on decision makers and legislators, whether it's here in America or other countries that are the US allies, particularly in the West.
Thank you. This question begins with, Dear Pedar, what is your plan for Iranian inventors? Did I get that right? I'm reading it correctly? Inventors. Thanks.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
What is your plan for Iranian inventors, assuming that they're inventing non-nuclear capable material?
Again, I mean, we have such talented, resourceful, ingenious people that if only given the tools and the opportunities to excel, to start up companies in every area, whether it's AI or anything that goes towards innovation and technology. That's exactly what I intend to do through IPP, is to maximize all of these opportunities, get as much investment, as much support from experts around the world, but in industries that can support all of this so that these opportunities are created. I mean, this country has been founded on the first formation of this country from the Carnegies to others. And, it's always about innovation. Today you have Elon Musk and people like that. I mean, this is a continuation of opportunities.
You had them in Iran before the revolution, too.
Yeah, but I mean, the potential is definitely there. So of course, whether it's art, whether it is science, whether it is anything, we have to make sure that these opportunities are not only available, but to commit to the fact that I think, and I hope future governments will dedicate a large part of our national budget on education and healthcare, of course, but also on stimulating and giving the best opportunities for people who, as our future inventors and creators, could be there. When you say this, all of a sudden I'm hit with this sad story of that young Iranian child who probably would have been, yeah, exactly. And, he would have been our next Einstein, maybe, who knows? And, it's so tragic when you think of all these opportunities denied and stolen. And so Gen V, this is it. We have an opportunity to solve all of that. Yeah.
So speaking of Gen Z
Keon and his
Gen
rainbow.
V, I think I'd be accurate to say, I think we have two student questions here. I have an easy one and a hard one. Which would you like first?
I don't ever have hard questions. No question is hard.
Your dad is great. Okay, let's start with the easy one because I want to end with this hard one. So this seems to be a student question too. Farsi is known for being a beautiful poetic language. What is your favorite word or phrase or saying in the language?
Saying,
Or favorite word or phrase or saying?
you know, Iranians being so emotional, I think ishq, which means love, is always.
Do you have a favorite phrase or a saying?
I have one particular, how we say, a phrase that I like a lot, which I always remind myself. گفت اگر عاقبت کار جهان نیستی است انگار که نیستی چو هستی خوش باش.
Do you want to translate it?
I will try to translate it. It's a poem to basically is almost like talking about the finality or the infinity of the world. It says, if the ultimate destiny of existence or the universe is non-existence, it's like you're not here, but since you are, be happy. Enjoy.
Now, I wasn't asked this question, but I have the mic, so I'll answer that. My favorite Persian saying is actually the one I hear the most often, and that's by my mother when she says, Tabi, chara kafi be man zang nemizani? Which literally means, Tabi, why don't you call me more often? Okay, now another student question. What do you recommend for students and youth in America when they encounter radicalized faculty members or fellow students? How should they best confront or respond?
Well, first of all, I think the attitude is that usually people who are of radical thinking, oddly enough, are the least tolerant people. They even try to impose their thinking, sometimes using even a brutal method. I think the best example of showing decorum and tolerance, and whether it is from an intellectual standpoint, is to encourage free debate and to make sure that at the end of the day, if one idea is being discussed and you have to defend, as you would defend a thesis if you're presenting a thesis, is to challenge them in a not by confrontation, not by bad mouthing or by attacking, but by saying let's bring it in the open. Let's see why it is that what you're suggesting is not right, or is not correct, or is not what we are thinking. And I think the part of being a student is not to take at face value anything that a professor might teach, because they may be wrong. They may be wrong, and that's the whole point. I think learning is not just accepting everything that is said, is to challenge something, is to question everything. I think the reason you go to school is to learn how to question. Because in practical life, you'll be faced every day with tough questions to which you will have to find an answer. Practicality of life. So you're not here necessarily to get a degree in mathematics or engineering or medicine or whatever it is that you're studying, but it's to learn to question. That's the number one thing that ought to be done. And by all means, question your professors, question your teachers. If you think that they are wrong, tell them so. I said, let's have an argument about that. Don't be fearful that because you're going to piss them off, they will fail you in that degree. Hopefully that's not the case. I don't think any of my teachers in USC would have been offended if I said, hey, I think you're wrong on this. So I guess
especially if they were teaching about Iran.
Now that's very interesting what you just said, because I think, it was like, sometimes to really have a better assessment of an impartial, objective narrative of something, it's not something that happens overnight. Sometimes it takes years, sometimes even decades, for all the facets of something that may have happened in an era, written by historians who do all the due diligence that it requires to basically come up with factual evidence-based analysis based on facts, not on opinion, not on preferences, not based on their own ideological pretensions, but based on facts. I think that's very important. I'm sure that the professor of history will agree with me that history is not just about writing a narrative, it's having all the facts, if you can have access to it, available, so you can then render the most objectively possible accounting of what happened, good, bad, or ugly, because the truth ultimately should be what history give us. I think part of the challenge is to the search for the truth. That's part of the questioning. What do we question? Why do we want to have all these debates? It's because we want to get to the truth. Whether we like the truth or not, it's still the truth. And the problem that I have is when they try to mask the truth or twist the truth, that's the problem starts occurring. That's where we begin to divert from the reality to some false narrative. And that is very misleading and often quite damaging, come to think of it. A lot of what we discussed tonight starts with a false narrative that is pushed with intent and purpose. And that's why we need to be vigilant and not to be caught into all of those twisted narratives. But it comes through the actual questions. It comes to actual debate. We should not fear asking the questions, because if our objective is to get to the truth, that's the first and most direct way of achieving it, in my opinion.
Thank you. So you know that the cover story I wrote about you was titled A Prince Among Men, and hopefully now we can all see why we chose that title. I want to thank you deeply for this. I want to invite USC Casden's brilliant Director of Academic Programming, Lisa Ansel. This program was her vision, up to join us.
دوستان و هموطنان عزیز به همگی میگم خوش آمدید. Good evening, everyone. My name is Lisa Ansel, and I am the Director of Academic Programming at the USC Casden Institute. On behalf of the USC Casden Institute, the USC Office of the Provost, and the entire Trojan community, we extend our warmest gratitude to Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi for having joined us tonight to deliver the inaugural Raymond and Dina Levy Distinguished Speakers Series. It is a profound honor for our university community to host Crown Prince Pahlavi, whose lifelong dedication to the ideals of democracy, pluralism, and freedom embodies the core values we hold so dear at USC. His vision and leadership offer not only inspiration, but also a beacon of hope for those who yearn for dignity, justice, and liberty in Iran and beyond. As we reflect upon the enduring presence of the Iranian Jewish community within the rich cultural landscape of Iran, we are reminded of the intricate beauty found in the famed woven rugs of Isfahan. Each thread in these celebrated tapestries carries its distinct hue and purpose, yet it is only through their interlacing that a masterpiece emerges, much like the story of Iran itself. Throughout history, the Iranian Jewish community has been inextricably woven with Zoroastrians, Muslims, Christians, Baha'is, and others, together forming a unique heritage bound by dialogue, resilience, and mutual influence. Their narratives have not existed in isolation, but have instead been shaped by centuries of shared joys, tribulations, and aspirations. The resulting fabric, a living testament to coexistence, has contributed immeasurably to Iran's artistic, spiritual, and intellectual wealth. Like the masterful artisans of Isfahan, who understand that the strength and beauty of a rug depend on the harmony and interdependence of its threads, so too does the greatness of Iran rest upon the unity and respect among its diverse peoples. The interwoven lives and faiths of Iran's communities have fostered a culture that is simultaneously ancient and ever renewing, drawing depth from its complexity and hope from its plurality. Looking forward, we are united in the vision articulated tonight by Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi, a vision of democracy, pluralism, and human rights. It is a vision that recognizes and honors every thread in the Iranian tapestry, ensuring that all voices, regardless of creed or background, are heard and cherished. This vision calls us to build an Iran where liberty and dignity are not the privileges of the few, but the birthright of all. We also wish to express our sincere appreciation to Tabi Raphael, whose thoughtful and engaging interview with Prince Pahlavi enriched this occasion immeasurably. Her keen insight and powerful voice not only illuminated the discussion, but also serve as a testament to the vibrant future of the Iranian Jewish community that she so eloquently represents. As we conclude this memorable event, we wish to express our profound gratitude to Raymond and Dina Levy for their tremendous vision and generosity, and let us carry forward the message of hope and unity. We greatly look forward to the second lecture in this series next year, which will be a collaboration between the USC Casden Institute and the USC Shoah Foundation on the topic of hidden histories, uncovering Mizrahi experiences during the Holocaust through testimony and memory. Finally, let us pledge to be steadfast in our support for those who strive for freedom and justice, and to work together towards a brighter tomorrow for Iran, for the Middle East, and for our world. Omid be fardahay roshantar. Hope for a brighter tomorrow begins with the vision of today. Thank you all for coming to share this incredible event with us, and have a good night. Shab Bekhair.